without further delay, let's begin today's event, sponsored by NTT Data and hosted by American Banker. I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, and that is Mike Sisk. Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Adam, and I would like to welcome the audience once again. We are very grateful that you're sharing some of your busy day with us today. We know that your time is valuable, and we will honor that today with what I'm confident will be an engaging 60 minutes or so of discussion. Once again, our topic today is AI success in FSI, talent, tools, and ethics. And my name is Mike Sisk. I am a contributing editor at American Banker, and I will be your moderator today. My articles have also appeared in Barron's, Crane's New York Business, Inc., Institutional Investor, Strategy and Business, and Worth. And just before we jump in here, I wanted to take a moment to sort of set the stage for our discussion today. Amid this new environment and this mass disruption, this has definitely been a year for digital reinvention, and emerging technologies enabled by artificial intelligence are at the very heart of these changes, and that was true even before the pandemic. And NTT Data has recently published a study which explores the specific challenges of adoption and the ethical risks of AI for financial services and insurance. And to further explore AI adoption and its success for financial services and insurance industry, today we have a panel of experts that will be discussing what they're seeing within their organizations, and they will be sharing their experiences. So very, very pleased to have such a talented and accomplished panel with us here today. And actually at this point, I would like to turn it over to them to introduce themselves. So if I could first lead off with Swarup, please tell us a little about yourself.
Thanks for that introduction and the backdrop. My name is Swarup. I lead the AI, ML, and the digital capabilities engineering area for Wells Fargo, and with a specific focus on furthering AI adoption at the bank in a scalable, predictable way, and looking forward to the rest of this dialogue with the rest of the panel.
Thank you so much. David, tell us a little about yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And my name is David Vanalik. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Claims at Markel. I've been with the company for a little over 13 years now, where the purview of what I oversee includes all of claim operations, our claims compliance and reporting teams, as well as our claim vendor management office. And we interface quite a bit with our information management teams, IT, digital teams, as well as our global security services groups. I started with Markel, joining back 13 years ago as a senior claim attorney from private practice, where I started in San Francisco, then moved over to Chicago, Illinois, and certainly looking forward to a great discussion here this afternoon.
Thank you, David. And Wayne.
Hi, thanks. My name is Wayne Bush. I'm the president of our financial services and insurance business here at NTT Data. Been in the industry for about 27 years. And, here within NTT Data, we're helping our clients through their digital transformations and their modernization journeys as they move from more application to infrastructure to data-centric parts of the business. So excited to talk about AI and how our clients can benefit from that here.
Thank you, Wayne. We still need to hear from Michael.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, my name is Michael Goodman. I lead the business insights practice at NTT Data. We work across our financial services and insurance clients, as well as clients in other industries, focusing on data, analytics, intelligent automation, and technology advisory, focusing on helping our clients develop strategy, doing the analysis, and the roadmaps necessary to pursue some of these advanced and transformational technologies.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And there you have it. That's our panel today. And just so everyone understands what we're doing today, I'm going to be asking just a couple of, 3 or 4 broad questions during our program today. And all 4 gentlemen are going to weigh in on those questions. So really looking forward to this. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And, let me put up some data here we're going to talk about right now. So I want to first to set up and start with the new research by NTT Data and Oxford Economic. Michael, could you tell us what you are seeing in the financial services and insurance industry around AI adoption?
Sure, thanks, Mike. This was a study we released a couple of months ago. And it's really part of a portfolio of research that we're doing around data, analytics, AI, machine learning, and advanced technologies. And what is really coming out of that is definite confirmation of sort of where we are in the grand scheme of adoption. In that, almost every story we dig into, and as we peel back the layers of the answers that we're getting and really start to analyze the data, it's typically sort of two sides of a coin. So, for example, we did find that financial services and insurance, amongst the industries that we looked at, are definitely leaders in the adoption of AI, machine learning. Financial services organizations focusing on predictive analytics, virtual assistants, a lot of integration with process automation, and even a little bit of work in blockchain. But yet, when we looked at where we really are in the life cycle, only 37% of those companies said we've really fully implemented AI across any of these business areas. And similarly, insurance actually emerged as the leader in broader adoption of AI, yet they are struggling and cite a real challenge in technical expertise. So as we look at the data, again, as I said, two sides of every coin. Of particular concern and something that we're spending a lot of time looking at and not only understanding ourselves, but helping work with our clients to help them understand is, the ethics and the management and the model risk of these advanced technologies. Where we found that in financial services, a good number, a large enough percentage to be concerned. If folks have responded and said, they've encountered a model that has, repeatedly offered suggestions that worked against a marginalized segment of the population. And that is, as we've seen in the news, one of the many challenges that we face in adoption of this new technology, and something that we're going to get into a little bit more today, but something we spend a lot of time focusing on. Which again, the other side of that is, we asked if folks really understand the technology and really understand the technical aspects of AI. Large percentage said, yes, we get it. And so that's where, again, we look at both sides of that and say, okay, yes, we recognize that lots of folks really understand the technology of AI and machine learning, but there's an applied element to that that really kind of brings the human oversight back into the picture that we need to pay particular attention to. And so as we move forward and look at the adoption curve that we're all going through, really focusing on the skill gap and making sure that we have not only the right technical folks to help everybody on their journey, but also the right risk management and model risk management folks to make sure that we are not only successfully deploying these capabilities, but also doing it in an ethically and risk managed way.
Very interesting. Thank you. So I guess my question would be to Dave. Could I turn to you and say, how is the industry organization achieving AI adoption? What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Do these findings surprise you?
Yeah. The pouring through the survey results, I saw that I think 6% of the respondents roughly were from the insurance industry. But there's that tension that Michael was sharing, that insurance as an industry was a leader in this adoption in this particular space. That on on the maturity curve, they were perhaps a bit higher than other industries. That did surprise me a little bit, but then, contrasting that with the survey results coming back indicating a lack of perhaps, that technical expertise or understanding, within some of the organizations, that didn't surprise me. It's definitely in terms of, the industry itself and the broader use cases that it is applied tool sets like artificial intelligence. It really falls into, I'd say, approximately 5 categories. One is, the distribution channels of, how insurance policies are sold, deployed to the end user, to the customer. We definitely see it also as an industry within the underwriting side of the house. Risk selection is a good example, of that. Certainly, claims processing, which is more my particular realm. There are individual, use cases that drive more operational efficiencies. And also another major area is, engaging that, customer experience and really, bringing higher levels of customer service to the policyholder, which I think is an industry is our overall, goal. In kind of preparing for this particular session, I was taking a look at the industry to see if there were any, broad or general guidelines that had been promulgated. And actually, last year, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners had put out some general guidance with respect to whether they be insurance companies or partners, trading partners, or technical vendors, general guidance as to how to go about, the deployment and the implementation of AI in particular. And there were about 4 or 5, core principles. One, identifying that any implementation has to be fair and ethical, which is, great that this organization is focused on this particular panel discussion today on the ethics sitting behind that, making sure it's not discriminatory, complies with all the laws. Another major area the NAIC espoused upon was that the organizations had to be accountable to be compliant, with the various states on that particular point. Transparency was also a key element, allowing the opportunity to see how the AI is being deployed and the end results, from those decisions that are made from that, as well as it being a secure, safe, and robust environment. Obviously, there's been, quite a bit of discussion, over the last couple of years in particular, whether it's the General Data Protection Regulation coming out of the EU, California's Consumer Privacy Act went into effect at the outset of this year. A lot of different things are, taking place focused on the consumer protection in particular. And so definitely, honed in on that particular point. Within the claims space itself, some of the areas where we have seen as an industry AI being deployed, I'd say outside the general customer service experience, whether it's through chatbot or virtual assistant environment, is the utilization of AI to triage new claims coming in the door and scoring them in such a way to allow the operational side to route those claims to high volume teams, for example, that handle high volume, low severity claims. Conversely, if something tends to be much more complex, or is what we call a claim jumper, utilizing AI to help route those to folks with a little bit more experience who can get those things situated much more quickly. The bottom line in the claim space is, to the extent a matter can be resolved much more quickly, efficiently, that improves the customer experience and also, at the end of the day, helps resolve things in a more cost-effective manner. So those tend to be some of the core areas that we see.
Interesting. Thank you, Dave. And Swarup, same question to you. Do you results surprising in any way, or what are your thoughts?
I think I will build up a bit on what David was alluding to. So I think from a financial industry standpoint, I'm not particularly surprised that the technology-wise, the readiness is there. But I think from a adoption at scale standpoint, I think we are going past the hype cycle that has been created over the past, like I think 4 or 5 years around the stigma with AI adoption. I think the conversation is changing more from just the vanity aspect of AI, where maybe the few executives from the top wanted something done from an AI perspective. The conversation is shifting from vanity to value, where value is all inclusive, both from doing right for the customers from an ethics standpoint, as well as driving operational efficiency. So I think that has been the undertone, and many of the driving factors that David alluded to, I think those that are driving the adoption scale. And specifically in the financial services industry, I think there's a higher degree of regulation that mandates all these controls. And specifically in our case, at Wells Fargo, we are a very risk-driven organization. So I think one of the key tenets is we talk about I before AI, specifically the I referring to the interpretability aspect of the actions that AI would lead into. And that kind of drives our ability to manage risk and drive adoption from there. And I think overall there's a learning curve. We completely understand that this is some of these things, there is a need for speed, but we understand the first few cycles are a marathon, not sprints. And then once we get a good rhythm going to it, we get all these tenants tackled and scale from there. I think industry at large are either at a exploratory or an experimental stage for wider adoption. But I think for key critical business processes, especially ones that are digitally mature, they are probably at a expansion aspect. I think that 100% or a complete embedding of AI into a business process, I think is still ways away. So that's kind of my point of view on where we are in the industry at large.
Interesting. Thank you, Swarb. And finally, I guess let me loop in Wayne. Wayne, what's your point of view on this? What are you seeing in terms of AI adoption in the FSI industry? What from a systems and integrator and consulting perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, you've heard a couple of my colleagues here talk about maturity and adoption. And while financial services and insurance have moved ahead, right, they're still not as fast as maybe media or retail businesses. But the places that they have excelled through our research and the study really tells us that technology implementation and process changes are areas where they've already started to make big progress, but less so around management structures or processes, and then definitely around culture. So, one of the key things that we see here is we focus a lot on technology implementation, but, the focus around talent and employees and your workforce and your partnership model in terms of collaborating with others are the areas that require the same amount of focus. And so those seem to have a lower adoption. And I'd say there's probably three things here that, that I'd call out. One is a better approach to onboarding both technologies and employees, right? It needs to be well structured and not lots of proof of concepts and sort of the shiny, object of the moment in terms of, figuring out a way to onboard and adopt these different technologies. The second is it's a journey, right? There's no like one, AI implementation and an organization's done. So it's an ongoing journey that needs to be planned for. And it's not just about implementation, but employees need to work in coordination and collaboration with AI as part of the day-to-day business processes. And there's a lot of fear in the marketplace by employees around their jobs being automated. But at the end of the day, it's the collaboration there that's really important. And the last, as you think about skill development and bringing skills and career paths and everything to the table, is interesting because, the survey showed us that, tied with compensation, the ability to work on, high-level strategic programs of change was #1 among employee interests. And so when you think about this being a key enabler of not just better customer experience, better decision-making, better risk management, better cost optimization, right? Employees want to be involved in that. And so remembering to bring the employees along the journey is a key part to this.
Yeah, and Wayne, if I could just, comment on that particular piece, because I too really honed in on that particular comment, and that really did resonate with me, because we see that time and time again, where it's you don't just move forward with a particular project or initiative or particular technology. There are many who wish to raise their hands and contribute to build that, and not only does that create buy-in within the broader business or those particular associates, but it basically improves and builds their skill sets, which grows and develops them professionally as well, which is just as equally important. And so if as part of that organizational change management kind of moving along that curve takes place with respect to those particular associates, and the technology aligns with it, it's not just the technology, it's really the humans and the empathy that sits behind that really drives that particular project forward and makes it successful for the customer at the end of the day.
It's such an interesting and important point about skills. Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
One comment first. I think just double-clicking on what David was alluding to, I think there are models around talent, especially when we talk about the data science talent that helps create some unique value propositions in the AI space. I think there are multiple models around complete federated to complete centralized to somewhere in between as a hybrid model. I think typically they start with something of a centralized, so we have good control on all the aspects that we talked about. How do we make sure that the ethics, while ensuring that the deepest talent is building the right mature models that feed into the AI. I think that's how it would start. And again, that's a struggle because you have a limited set of data science and AI talent that everybody's trying to tap into. So that's been another observation that typically from a talent perspective that supports this larger enterprise charter, usually starts with something of a centralized model, and then it scales into more of a federated model. But again, the key tenet is like, how is this driving business value? I think that's kind of how the decision-making is structured.
Interesting. Thank you. I was just started to say before, it's just this notion about kind of bridging the skills gap is such an important one. I want to kind of keep things rolling here. We're gonna have a poll with the audience in just a moment, but I think everyone's talked about this a little bit except for Michael. Could I get you to talk a little bit about what companies are doing to close the gap?
Yeah, it's closing from, I'll say, two sides, right? One is, as we've talked about, the focus on the expert and developing the expert and growing the experts. But the other side of this is the emergence and maturity of, I'll say, sort of self-service machine learning tools. Ultimately, when we look at companies that are very, very technically sophisticated, not necessarily in financial services, but even beyond that, just across the global corporate landscape, one of the defining characteristics is a much more sort of ubiquitous focus on machine learning, AI, allowing the organization to be very, very data-driven and have the ability to assimilate large amounts of a wide variety of data. So as we look to bridge that, certainly upskilling our people and encouraging pursuit of data science careers is important. But the other piece of that is the growth of the self-service or the ubiquitous AI tool, and we're moving past the sort of Excel spreadsheet phase into a lot of folks in a lot of departments are starting to leverage more sophisticated tools, which then again drives that risk element. Is where we are spending more and more time working with our clients is managing that capability and combining a view of the data environment with a view of the analytics department so that there's levels of curation, so that we can make sure that we're properly empowering all the organizations, but also sort of giving them guardrails within which to work based on their level of expertise and the business problems they're trying to solve, so that we can, the decisions are effective and the models are actually adding value to the organization, and we're not getting trapped by just sort of AI for AI's sake.
Interesting. Thank you. All right. I think right now I would love to loop in our audience here on our first poll question and get a little feedback from everyone that joined us here today. Question and the possible answers here. And with this one, we'd love you to select the 3 that apply. And there's a lot of possibilities here, so you just make sure your window is open large enough that you can see all, I think, 8 different. To what extent do you agree about how AI fits into your team's business processes? Would you say, I personally understand the technical aspects of AI applications at my company, strategically implemented in key functions to optimize specific processes? C-suite executives have identified new areas to test our AI applications. We have a process in place to monitor AI performance. I've personally identified new areas to test our AI applications. And actually, there's a double one there, so you can probably just skip that one, or unless you want to really emphasize it. Then employees have identified new areas to test our AI applications, technical aspects of AI application companies. So again, this is to what extent do you agree with the following statements about how AI fits into your team's business processes, and just select 3 here, and I'll give everyone just another moment or two to make those choices, and then I will share the results to everyone with us.
We're waiting for folks to fill out the study and select read through that list of questions. I'd like to highlight just another point from the study, which I think is interesting in that it gets to the organizational element, and one of the many keys to success is, for a long time we've talked about the need for the business to own the data, and what we're finding both from the study and from our other work is that AI and machine learning drive that message in a way that we hadn't seen previously. And what I mean by that is, what it really requires, again, to balance this variety and velocity and volume of data, is that the business is working effectively with the technology organization, where the business is addressing a lot of these conceptual problems and conceptual challenges with the data. Things like appropriateness, suitability, completeness, and creating a context for the environment of data that is then used by the technologist to build the models. And that gets back into the management element. And we're finding, and it came out in elsewhere in the study and in our other work, that is one of the key drivers of success, but also one of the critical challenges that we found particularly interesting as we looked at the findings from the study.
Interesting. All right, let me pop up these results for everyone. And okay, here we go. So represented across the board here, 48.4% said AI has been strategically implemented in key functions to optimize specific processes. That was the number one. I think the next one was, I personally understand the technical aspects of AI applications at my company. And then looks like we have a process in place to monitor AI performance. So thank you very much for those results. Really appreciate everyone weighing in on those. would anyone like to weigh in on these results here? Any surprises, or are these sort of kind of what you expected to see, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think this aligns with I guess this sample aligns with our survey sample in many ways. I'm often, and this is one of the things that my group is sort of digging into is individuals that personally understand the technical aspects of AI applications at the company, because really understanding them, and I guess maybe it's the technical aspect, but then there's also the business context of the AI applications is critically important. And I think given the maturity there, it's important to really understand. Another element of this, both in financial services and in insurance, particularly when we're talking about emerging and new technologies, is the regulator, right? We can't forget the regulatory environment that both those industries function in, and the fact that the regulators are working very hard to come up to speed and make sure that they are applying the appropriate regulatory lens to these platforms and the capabilities and the models that are developed. But I think, one thing, as I look at the results of this poll and at the study, is a reminder to the audience to make sure that you're being particularly careful to make sure you can explain, sort of show your work, and recognize that the regulation of AI machine learning models is less mature than the regulation of sort of traditional, legacy analytics. And it's incumbent upon the developers to make sure that they are telling a clear risk management story. So understanding the technical aspects of that application is critical to invest in and continue to, grow.
And Michael, to kind of piggyback off your particular comment too, not only within or across the different states and territories, and then there's some federal overlay as well with respect to the myriad of different regulations, but also the evolving nature of them too, right? And staying on top of that, and particularly during this COVID period. In 2020, we saw quite a few, changes, evolutions within, various, regulatory, schemes, insurance commissioner bulletins, what have you, that affected, all various aspects of the insurance industry. And so it's not just, amongst, the various states, but also within themselves, and trying to stay on top of that.
Yeah, I think one quick call out on this aspect is I think it's particularly important, Michael, and your point that I think the post-COVID world, there is like a new normal that has been is expected of I think each one of us. The particularly interesting thing is about AI acceptance as a implementation in strategic specific processes. I think there was just accelerated adoption over the last 6 to 9 months. I think most companies and Wells Fargo as well, I think we've been able to question our own blockers in a much accelerated way, where programs or adoptions that would have taken years have been brought down to months, and in some cases even weeks. I think to the specificity of the key functions, I think is the underlying factor. I think we from post-COVID continuing to focusing on what those key functions are and driving adoption. I think that just gives you a larger scale and overall adoption curve. I think it's not about like trying to get to AI for the sake of AI. I think as Michael was mentioning, it's about getting to those key functions where you clearly draw value and be able to make progress.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, let's move on to the next discussion topic here. And Dave and Swarup both, as we dive deeper in AI, what are some of the best practices that you can share, and how are you making this successful? And Swarup, maybe we can start with you on this one.
Absolutely. I think in our case, as I alluded briefly, we took an approach of a centralized model development center of excellence to be instituted. And that center of excellence focuses on a specific set of domains that are solving some hard end-to-end business problems, and the AI adoption is embedded into that. So, for example, for us, we created a framework we call it the 4D framework. Essentially, it talks about each of the D in that 4D is about data, dollars, deployability, and differentiation. That's kind of our gating criteria when we have a new idea. We take it through a very rigorous funnel process. The rigorous doesn't necessarily mean time-consuming. It is a agile way of working. So we look at this conceptual model where we look at the data readiness for building models. How do we extract features from the data? The dollars in terms of the business value or business benefit, and deployability, where how quickly can we deploy it into production with all the risks and regulatory controls that are required to ensure that the ethical aspect as well as the explainability aspects of an AI model are accounted for. And obviously differentiation, if it's a different market differentiator, how do we get to from an adoption standpoint quickly? So I think that's kind of our framing for where do we get started. And then we have domain expertise for each of these where cross enterprise-wide setting that cuts across our operational functions like fraud management, as well as customer experience related aspects around personalization, where we can have a more directed conversation with our customers. So I think it's like a broad set of principled approach that's helping us to get to more disciplined way to approaching AI as yet another set of capabilities that can be offered to the enterprise that serves multiple lines of businesses and experiences from where they transition. It could be a digital or one of the traditional channels like a branch or a contact center. So I know it's a broad kind of a context setting from where we are going, but that is how we are approaching it strategically.
Excellent, thank you. And Dave, could you share?
Yes, Mike, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with the comments Swarab was making about kind of building, that proper structure. And in something that Michael had alluded to was, the business side kind of, owning the particular, issue or task at hand is very helpful when you have a strong culture throughout the entire organization that data is an asset. It has to take place throughout all facets of the company at every level from the line all the way up to executive leadership, and it has to be fully supported and have executive sponsorship as well. But it's not just a top-down approach. It really is support and sponsorship from the executives, as well as that bottom-up approach where folks on the line who do the business of whatever aspect of the insurance industry they're in, whether they're on the underwriting side of the house, underwriting operations, actuarial, finance, claims, what have you, all different facets need to be in a position to be able to elevate particular issues to identify where AI is best, utilized and deployed, and finding those particular solutions. And part of this, and we've already chatted about it a little bit, is also closing that particular skills gap and creating that culture of innovation and open-mindedness, so that those individuals can recognize when particular AI might be able to be deployed in a particular area to really help the customer at the end of the day, or drive some great operational efficiencies.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. And Michael, could you share some additional best practices on how FSI organizations are leveraging tools and programs to address challenges like risks, talent gaps, and AI adoption?
Sure. I think the first point I'd make is if you haven't started down this road, or if your company hasn't started down this road, still in the we're thinking about it stage, jump in. It is we are still early in the evolution, but all signs are pointing to this capability, AI, the ability to fully leverage AI, machine learning, and advanced analytics as an emerging differentiator. And so, the last thing you want to happen is to get left behind because you didn't start pursuing and didn't keep up with the technology. So, definitely jump in and get started. And then the second thing is, we don't want to forget some of the lessons that we've learned over many, many years of new technology. All technology was new at some point. And I come back to it, and I keep going. I'm sort of the tech person and the data person in the organization, but I keep advocating on behalf of the people. So the old people, process, and technology model still applies here. And I would argue it applies even more here. So as you're thinking about establishing a center of excellence, which is definitely a best practice to provide that curation that I talked about, making sure that we're matching the people and the data, the people and the technology, we're not overlooking that balanced equation of people, process, and technology. Are we taking care of all three of those and keeping those three elements in balance? Just like other technologies, you don't want to lead with tools. We see a lot of organizations that every company does this, right? They think that the next tool is going to solve their problem. And then they end up with a big inventory of tools. So, keeping that equation balanced, I think, is one of the key elements of success in adopting not just this, but really any new technology.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. I think let me share our second poll, but I want to remind everyone that we do have time at the end, probably about 5 or 10 minutes for some questions from the audience. So if you've got something on your mind, now would definitely be the time to get that question into the queue. And if we don't get to a question you ask in the time that we've got today, we will definitely follow up afterwards. So please, ask away. We very much want to hear from you. All right, so let me go ahead and push this next poll here up to everyone. So while you're thinking about your questions to the panelists, you can also be thinking about this poll. To the best of your knowledge, what protections has your organization put in place to reduce the risk AI brings? And this, again, is if you could choose the top 3, and there's a long list here, so you can scroll down and go through it. And I won't read through this list, but I'll let you let everyone do that. And while this poll is up, let me turn to Wayne and say or ask you that the new research study has offered insights into AI adoption and its success. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on that while we're waiting for all of our responses from the audience.
Thanks, Mike. There's really, 4, strategies for success that we call out in the survey. We've talked a lot about the fact that, AI is a lot more than just technology. So I'm not going to elaborate on that point specifically. But the second is, often as we think about Michael's comments around jumping in, right, it's time to wade into the water. And, we talk about agility or being nimble or whatnot. This is about getting, some of the processes in place, right? The different talent and metrics to measure. And senior management team to lead this change, right? Only about 29% of executives said that they agreed strongly that they understood, AI and its implication on their business. And so if they don't have that perspective, it's hard to work this bottom up. While it's transformative, it's not easy. So, you think about any type of transformative program that, our clients go through, and you think about, getting the right processes and data and skills and leadership in place. We think that's critical. And then lastly, we talked briefly about it, and it's a question here right now, but about ethics and transparency, right? AI isn't something you implement once and it works the same way, right? It by definition, it's learning and changing. And there were concerns expressed in the survey around, ethically applying AI and being able to manage and monitor that. And so those are really the four, recommendations that we have coming out of our research.
Thank you. All right, perfect. And I think that is a nice amount of time to give everyone some ample time to mull this question. Let me share results here. And okay, so as you will see, about half of our participants today, actually exactly half, 50%, said sponsored employee training programs in AI-powered technologies. And the next most popular tied here, we've got adjusted to go-to-market strategy and hired outside consultants for guidance. And again, the question here was, to the best of your knowledge, what protections has your organization put in place to reduce the risk AI brings? So I'll just just before I turn to questions from the audience, would any of you gentlemen like to weigh in on these results? Any surprises here, or again, kind of in line with what you would expect?
I can jump in. I think this is in line with what I would expect, especially given both the industries, financial services and insurance, are heavily regulated, and the expectation from all participants is like everybody's a risk manager, and you have to ensure what that means, have a strong risk framework, ensure the framework is practiced, not just socialized. So this is in line with what I would expect, that the trainings are creating a cultural shift where these tools, technologies are enabled in ensuring that everybody is better at their job of being a risk manager, along with whatever their titles are. So I think I'm pleasantly surprised that this is a trend.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Swarup's comments that it doesn't surprise me at all that training, in particular sponsoring employee training, is really key here. And it's not just with respect to AI. I looked at that top line on increased information security budget, and thinking to as an industry overall. It's not just the tools designed to secure our systems collectively and ensure that the privacy is protected, but there's constant training, right, of all associates at regular cadences, because it's you're only as strong as your weakest link, is the old adage, correct? So it's important to have the employees, the associates, the personnel, the trading partners, the vendors, all in alignment, recognizing that that's key, and that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, as we talked about shortage of talent, right? You can see kind of three themes evolving here among like the top 4 or 5 answers, right? One is training your existing team. The other is bringing other experts, hiring other experts, and the third is working with experienced third parties. In a world where there's a talent drain, right, bringing those all together in a common framework in your organization, I think, is a best practice for people to follow.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, we've got about 9 minutes here for some questions from the audience. So let's. I think we should switch gears here slightly and do that. So let me go ahead and move off of this polling slide and onto our Q&A slide. So anyone, if you've got a question to ask, now would definitely be the moment to get that into the queue. But we've got some good ones here already. So let me just let's just jump right in. All right. What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions about AI adoption across financial services and insurance? And I'll toss this out to the group.
I Yeah, I would jump in to say I think some of the common misconceptions are sort of what it is, what it can do, and what it can't do. And it is organizations and leaders think about applying this technology, that's where really understanding its capability comes into play, where there's a lot of times where I get pulled into discussions and we want to use AI for this or that. I say, well, why are you using AI or machine learning for this task or that task? When that question is easily answerable, or that model is easily developed without making a significant investment. But the flip side of that, and really the more interesting side of that, is the discussion that I'd love to get into, which is sort of as opposed to what keeps you up at night with my client, it's being able to go to them and say, what answers do you wish you had? What do you want to know about your business, about the market, about the ecosystem that you don't have today? Because given the volume and velocity and variety of data out there, a lot of times those answers are out there. And it's not a matter of getting the data. It's really a matter of going out and harvesting it and mining it and bringing it in and analyzing it and developing those capabilities. So, I think folks generally underestimate the power of really where this is going to go when it's very fully applied in a mature way.
Interesting. Thank you. All right. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next question here. All right, good. Here's one. Within the financial services and insurance industry, what particular areas of the business do you see AI adoption the most? Any takers on that one?
I guess I can.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can start with your broader perspective, and I can, David and we can double click into our own unique observation.
Yeah, I think broadly it's we've seen a lot in risk management. We are doing more and more in sort of data quality management, helping organizations, manage the complexity of the data environment. We're seeing more and more customer experience oriented models, next best action models, strategy guidance models, but also just intelligent agents, customer interaction models to improve the efficiencies of call centers and some basic operations. Some focused on lowering cost, some focused on driving additional business. But I'd say it's the current adoption heavily centered around risk, client experience, and then some technology.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we look at this, we think about them as sort of low-level junior tasks. But I think AI has the potential, and I'm seeing clients use it more in a matter of better running their businesses, right? Applying it to the overall risk or operations or cost structure. And I think one of the implications is as AI becomes more pervasive and more effective, it'll replace a lot of middle management decision making and optimize decisions for the organization versus what might just be in front of somebody's face. And so I think the impact is much broader in that context than just customer interactions or individual transaction processing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Swerve.
Go ahead. Yeah, to build on that quickly, I mean, one of the things as we hopefully begin to emerge from the COVID world that we are all living in, we're seeing a growing demand for clients, both in financial services and insurance, but in all industries, to really understand sort of the new norm. We talk about the new normal, yet we don't. I think it's a little premature to call it normal, but it's the pending normal. And where is it's going to be an uneven recovery, and a lot of interest in really understanding sort of where the recovery is going to go, so that every company is able to capitalize that and apply their resources very effectively to what is certainly going to be a an uneven, mixed kind of recovery.
And to build off of a comment that Wayne, I think you were alluding to with respect to the operational pieces within the broader industry, I would almost describe it as you see it more on the front end, whether it's submission workflows, binds, especially across more homogeneous type products in particular. There's more adoption typically seen there, as well as more homogeneous claims of a similar size, type, severity, sort of thing. And then also on the back end, whether it's payments or actual binding, that sort of thing. And then to Michael, to your comments, definitely seeing a lot of emphasis in the broader customer experience. How can AI be utilized in such a way to really provide better customer experience? And it's almost like the best AI is that which just kind of sits really in the background, and it really amplifies the insurance professional in particular, and their experience, their empathy, and their ability to connect with those individuals and make that policyholder or end user feel valued. So those are two definite areas that we see.
Yeah, I think that is consistent with what we've been observing as well. I think the two large drivers are operational efficiencies and increasing digital engagement. I think with COVID situation, the digital engagement, just the need for that with the traditional physical channels are out of commission. So I think just the increased digital engagement and the need to support with AI-supported capabilities in the back end, I think that's just got elevated. And the operational efficiencies, I think there's an aspect of many of the operational processes already having a semblance of automation in place, but I think with AI, it can augment many of those processes by still having the interaction with the operational support personnel, but managing their workload. For example, any fraud claims or fraud operations, how do we delineate high-risk items versus low-risk items? Just that delineation to better manage operations, I think those are just amplified from a demand perspective.
Excellent. Thank you all. And we're just about at the top of the hour here, and we always like to bring things in basically on schedule here. But let me just turn to Michael one last time. Is there just any final thoughts to wrap up our great discussion today?
Yeah, I think as we've said, it's an interesting area, definitely emerging. I think that organizations definitely need to wade in and get started, and look to the research. Right, we've done, as I said, a portfolio of studies. We're now digging deeper into the data elements that support AI and machine learning. Is our latest project that we're working on, and understanding how customers feel about the use of data in AI models and by financial services institutions. So it's an area where we have a lot to learn, but I think properly applied, it's an area that is really going to change the way we do business going forward.
Excellent. I think that is a perfect note to end on. So thank you so much. Let me, as I said, we love to bring these programs in on time, knowing that so many folks are rushing to something else at the top of the hour. But let me just take another moment to thank Swarup and David and Wayne and Michael all for a tremendous hour of discussion here. Lots of good data to share and kind of mull over here. And also, I want to thank everyone in the audience for being here. We would not want to do it without you. So thank you for coming, participating in those polls, and also asking these questions at the end. It's always great to have an engaged audience, and you've been just that. So thank you so much. We'll be sending you a follow-up email in the next day or two that will have a recording of the event, so you can kind of re-listen to the highlights. And we encourage you to do that. So With that, I think I will officially wrap it up. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope you'll join us again here very soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.